The Empire cannot win. You'll never feel right unless you are doing what you can to stop them.
Welcome to Decoding TV's coverage of Andor Season 2. I'm David Chen. This is going to be the first of 4 bonus episodes about Andor Season 2 that's going to be available on the Decoding TV podcast feed and also at youtube.com/@decodingtv. There's going to be 4 3-episode drops, so each drop is about 2.5 hours long, and there's a lot to cover. And joining me today for this episode of the podcast, as well as each of the 4 Andor episode drops, is one of my favorite Star Warsologists on the internet. You've seen his video essays at youtube.com/Patrick H. Willems. He was also my co-host on Decoding TV when we covered the first season of Andor. Patrick H. Willems, welcome back to Decoding TV.
Thank you, David Chen. It is such a pleasure to be here with you talking about one of our favorite shows.
Who'd have thought? Who'd have thought that we would still be around to see Andor Season 2 released into the wild? It's incredible.
Not me.
Not me, absolutely. Well, before we get started today, a couple of ground rules for how we're going to do this. First of all, Patrick and I have both seen more episodes than what has been released, but there will absolutely be no spoilers or hints at anything that happens in future episodes. That's going to happen throughout this season. However, we will discuss the overall structure of the season, which has been discussed endlessly by Tony Gilroy publicly. That's all in the news and everything like that. So I just want people to know we'll be discussing vaguely how the season is going to be structured. So just be aware of that.
Yep.
And
I think Tony Gilroy was talking about that 2 years ago in interviews. Here's how we're going to do season 2.
When we did season 1, he was basically talking about it. So this is not new news. And the only other thing I want to mention is that I've adapted the rundown of the episode that I'm going to read from today from Dan Gvozden's write-up at decodingtv.com. That is a free newsletter you should subscribe to read the whole rundown, which features much more detail and thoughtful commentary. Become a free subscriber at decodingtv.com. Dan has done an amazing job detailing this, because I got to say, Patrick Willems, when I started watching this, and typically what I do is I need to write down everything that happens so we can discuss on the podcast. It was daunting. There's a lot that happens in these first 3 episodes that we're going to discuss today.
Yes, and also I was thinking back to when we did the first season, and it would be a thing where there would be new characters introduced in every episode, but they wouldn't be on IMDb yet, and so we'd be trying to be like, what was their name?
Right,
who played who?
We might not necessarily have subtitles either, but anyway,
Yep.
we have subtitles, and I also am very grateful to have Dan Gvozden's brilliant writing to guide us for this conversation. So if you want to check out his, again, very thoughtful commentary, much more detail than what we're going to discuss here, even on this podcast, become a free subscriber at decodingtv.com. It's free. You can get every recap and review delivered to your inbox. It's great. So decodingtv.com. Okay, Patrick Willems, let's get into it. What we're going to do here, we're going to talk about the first 3 episodes of the show, Andor Season 2. We are going to start by discussing our overall thoughts. And then I'm going to dive into exactly what happens, each of the plot lines that occurs. And then, we'll talk about each one of those as well. So, and of course, if you're listening or watching, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments or at decodingtv@gmail.com. Patrick Willems, your thoughts on Andor Season 2, episodes 1 through 3.
Well, David Chen, I think in these first 3 episodes, it's real good. I think so far it is living up to the level of quality that we expect from this show, which in the past couple of years or so since season 1 aired, I have gone back and rewatched it, which is a thing that I don't do a lot with TV.
Mm-hmm.
And it has really cemented itself as one of my favorite shows, I think, of the decade. And so, expectations were sky high for season 2. And in this first batch, especially, in episode 3, as everything comes together, once again, these are structured in 3-episode arcs. So it's it's almost like, I don't want to make the movie comparison, which is made too often, usually by people making TV shows, but it is a fairly a somewhat complete story. These first three, you have your introduction, your table setting, all of that, and then like all the dominoes are knocked over in episode 3 as like everything reaches a climax, and it was, I think, really thrilling stuff.
I agree. Let's talk a little bit about that structure. So this season is going to be quite different than season 1. Famously, I think they originally had a plan for 5 seasons of the show. And they took one season and made it into season 1. And then they took seasons 2 through 5 and made it into season 2.
Yep.
And the story as it was told is basically Tony Gilroy and Diego Luna were talking to each other, and they said, if we keep making these episodes at this pace, we will be doing this until we're like 85 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way to actually complete the story is by compressing it into 4 3-episode arcs, basically.
That jump ahead a year with each arc.
So each episode drop will be separated by a year of time in the chronology. And having seen more episodes, I can vouch for the fact that like each 3-episode arc does feel like a self-contained story. Feels like its own, 2-hour, 15-minute long movie. And whereas compare that to season 1, which all took place in the course of 1 year. So like there's a lot more time covered in season 2 than in season 1. Also, it's interesting that they're releasing them in this way. It's a lot of material to release each week.
I saw an interview with Tony Gilroy or a Reddit where he was asked about the release strategy, which obviously was not his decision, and he was just like, "Man, this is going to be tough on people who do recap podcasts."
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it's interesting that he said that, Patrick Willems, because there's not that many recap podcasts out there for Andor, Star Wars, Andor season 2. So like, it is inconceivable that the director of Michael Clayton has listened to us talk about Andor season 1. It is entirely possible.
It is possible, or if not him, someone else in the writer's room. And I will say, I'm not going to really jump ahead here, but in regards to one storyline in particular, I really felt like he had listened to the podcast and was like, let me give Patrick Willems like more than he ever could have dreamed of.
Right. Yeah, we'll be discussing that momentarily for sure. We'll get to that. So anyway, the episode drops, right? I think season 1 of the show, the reviews were rapturous, but the ratings were not matching the critical reception. And some of the complaints were that season 1 was too slow. Now, I don't know that I shared those complaints, but I think that probably the episodes dropping in this fashion was to get around those complaints, right? Because like, say what you will about the first 3 episodes, but there was a very solid amount of action in it and a lot of climax and payoff in these first 3 episodes that you might not have gotten if just one episode was released this week. You know what I'm saying?
David, remind me, in season 1, didn't they release the first 3 together and then it was all like 1 a week after that?
I think that might be accurate. It's either the first 1 or 2 or 3, so it was like the first few episodes. But yeah, it's very different this season. And oh no, you're right. Season 1 episodes 1 through 3 were released at once. So
okay, which is one of those things like I've recommended the show to so many people who, I feel like fairly justifiably, were like, I don't know, a Star Wars show. I've been burned before, and I've been like, no, trust me, this is the one to watch. And the thing that I always say is sit down and watch the first 3 in one sitting. And then because I've talked to people who are smart people with good taste who are just like, I don't know, I watched the first episode and it was kind of slow and not a lot happened. I'm like, just if you do the first 3 together, you'll be all in. And so, with the new season, it does strike me as kind of an odd move to do the whole thing in 3-episode drops, considering that this is, I'd say the best and most acclaimed show that Disney Plus has. And I'm like, you really just want to burn through all of it in 1 month instead of like maybe being able to like build momentum and keep it like in the cultural conversation for longer. But whatever.
I mean, also, it is hard for the podcast recappers. Like, there's just a lot. It's a lot to watch. It's a lot to digest and talk about.
Yeah.
So that would make it easier for us as well. But whatever. I'm glad we got the season at all, and so we can't complain too
Yes.
much. I will just say some quick thoughts about season 2 before we get into what actually happened, which is, I think that the first thing that really struck me about the season watching it was the sheer ambition of it. Just new worlds, or at least existing worlds viewed in different light, like
Mm-hmm.
new characters, all these different plot lines and subplots and cultures that are being introduced into this universe. This budget for season 2 was apparently around $290 million. It looks like it. It looks spectacular. And I think they probably took some notes from season 1 of like, we need more action, adventure, and Star Wars-y stuff. And they put that in here, but not in a way that feels inorganic.
Yeah.
I think it is... there is more like excitement and tension, I think, in general so far this season. And overall, I'm very, very excited for the rest of how season 2 is going to unfold. So, huge fan of the first 3 episodes.
Yeah.
And it's... Yep, go ahead.
It is. It's interesting. Like I'm curious if what you're saying, like, was actually, like, if they got a note about like we should put in more action adventure stuff, or if that was just their own decision, because it doesn't feel like, anything was compromised, or like they had to make any adjustments in order to like this feels like exactly the show they wanted to make. But it is sort of a thing where I think, if the first season is the story of a guy becoming radicalized, and like what it takes for a person to like become a revolutionary, and this is the season about being a revolutionary and like actually like fighting a war, and then in particular, as we see in these first 3 episodes, a lot of it is about the cost and sacrifices of like being in this war, whether they are moral compromises or like people you lose and stuff like that. And just now that he's in a war that he spent the first season like deciding whether or not he wanted to be in, you're gonna get more action with that. But also, you'll get fancy weddings.
but also you'll get TIE fighters, and
You will.
and things blowing up and stuff. So anyway, let's dive into it. Let's talk about what happens in the first 3 episodes of Andor season 2. The first batch of episodes follows 4 distinct intercut plot lines. The show begins 1 year after the events of season 1, now 4 years before the Battle of Yavin, BBY4. We reunite with Cassian Andor impersonating an Imperial test pilot at Cinar Test Facility 73. With the help of Nia, an Imperial defector, he's there to steal a TIE fighter for the burgeoning rebellion. However, it's clear he doesn't have any idea how to fly this thing, requiring him to blast his way out of the facility. He arrives at a mysterious, unidentified planet, only to find that the person he was supposed to hand the aircraft off to, Porco, was killed by an abandoned splinter group of rebels. They take him prisoner, giving him a front-row view of their fracturing alliance, as hunger and fear of a man-eating creature called a Dudar, which comes for them at night, begins to engulf the group. The divide between the men erupts into violence, with one group slowly turning the TIE fighters' guns on the other group's encampment. Amid the chaos, Cassian frees himself from his bindings, kills a few men, and escapes in the battle-damaged TIE fighter. It's only as he flies over the horizon that it's revealed that he was stranded on the moon, Yavin 4. He starts trying to get home, which we learn is an agricultural planet in the galaxy's outer rim called Minoro. All right, so that is the Cassian Andor subplot for the most part.
Yeah.
He comes in at the end and saves the day. But this was bold to like open the show this way. Basically, like, introduce us to a bunch of characters that we don't know. We may never meet again. We have no idea. And also they seem to be like bumbling fools for the most part. I really like this because it shows that like our concept of rebellions may not be accurate, right? They're not always super organized like Luthen Rail.
Right.
Sometimes they're just like there's a bunch of infighting. People don't know what they're doing, and people turning on each other. Like, this is a thing that happens. Patrick Willems, what did you think of the Cassian Andor subplot this episode?
Well, okay, to start at the very beginning with the TIE fighter heist, right there. I mean, this is just like it's a terrific opening sequence, especially like if you're a person who maybe thinks the show is too slow or what. I don't know. I can't imagine anyone's like jumping in with season 2 didn't watch season 1, but this is such an exciting opening sequence, and it does one of the things that I love about this show so much, where it'll introduce like a really minor character who basically is in like one scene and we might never see again. What was her name? The woman at the
Nia, I believe.
Nia. And immediately it's like, oh, this is a fully realized character.
You've become more than your fear. Let that protect you.
She has stuff going on. She has, she's clearly like terrified of having agreed to help Cassian, like steal this TIE fighter, and I'm just like, this is. I love this. Like right away, like you can see that like he's maybe been there for like a little bit, kind of like infiltrating that base, and like there's like they actually have like a relationship between the two, not like a romantic relationship, but like the characters have they have good chemistry, and this sequence, it's funny, it's exciting, and this is the most we've ever seen about like how TIE fighters actually operate in terms of like how you actually like pilot them. And I love that attention to detail with like the technology and vehicles of this world, like really figuring out like, even though this is all made up sci-fi stuff, like how would you actually like steer and control one of these? It's great. The sequence on, as we learn, Yavin 4 is interesting. This is actually maybe the biggest criticism I have of this first batch, in that I don't think any of this is bad, but I think the stuff with the rebel group there works the least well of anything in these first 3 episodes. As in, like, I really get what Gilroy is going for here, and I think the idea is really good about like, oh, we're used to the Rebel Alliance from the original trilogy, where you're run by like Princess Leia and Mon Mothma, and it's like a really like slick operation, and it's like everyone is very chummy, and it's like a whole army, and it's like, oh no, this is like, even though these people are on the same side, they're like fighting each other. This is like a total mess. It's totally disorganized. Like how could these pathetic people who were just like killing their own friends, just because they're scared, how could they ever hope of taking down the Empire? I think the idea like works really well. It is just a thing of like, it's the funny thing of, this is also the most American accents we like ever hear on the show. It's almost like jarring at first when there's a lot of American accents, when most of the cast of the show is British. But it is a thing where I'm like, and I watched it twice, and it definitely like worked better the second time. But I was wondering, like, are some of these characters like a little broad, a little stupid? Is it just like all of their bickering? It's like it didn't, for me at least, quite have like the subtlety that so much of the show has, and I was getting a little bit worried, like, how long are we gonna spend here with just like a bunch of idiots like shouting at each other?
He's an impy pilot. Just do this, please. Then do it. Let's see. We're waiting. Let me know when you're done.
And so this to me was, even though I think it's getting at a really interesting idea, the actual execution of it to me was like the least compelling part of the first batch.
That's interesting. I found it to be very fascinating, because he basically crash lands into another show, right?
Yes.
Like, there's been a whole other drama going on that we don't know about. And I like whenever a show makes you feel like there's a whole other universe that you're just not even, like, this is a whole universe that's just going on when you're not with the characters. And all of a sudden they intersect in a really terrible way. Also, I like the idea of this thing is hanging on by such a thread. Like, we know, having seen Rogue One, a Star Wars story, how important Cassian Andor is to the rebellion, right? And the plan that occurs in Rogue One. And so it's like the wrong person gets in touch with Cassian Andor or intersects with Cassian Andor, and like the whole plan goes up in smithereens, right? Like everything goes away. And I liked that it brought out how delicate that idea is. Just like he gets the wrong guy gets pissed and shoots a blaster at him, and it's all over. Like the Death Star, Star Wars Episode 4 doesn't happen, or doesn't happen in the same way. So I like that. There's a lot of things I liked about it, and I understand your issues, but I didn't have the same issues.
Yeah, it was. It played better on rewatch again, and this is not like I didn't hate this part or anything. I think I just didn't like. I didn't find these characters as interesting as like the rest of the cast.
Yeah,
that was really it.
You didn't like Roski Rules or whatever the game they played was, which is apparently there's no rock paper scissors.
I know. I mean, here's
Star
the thing.
Wars.
Anything like that, whether it's Roski Rules or are the various like Chandrillan like wedding ceremony customs and like terminology. Like I love all of that stuff. Just the specificity of them like building out this world. I love that. I like their little like moldy food bars and the melons and stuff like that. And also I noticed one of the leader of one of the sides, the guy with the beard and longer hair, played by Tony Gilroy's son. A lot of Gilroys involved in this show.
Yeah,
but
Tony Gilroy, your Dan Gilroy's, like a lot of Gilroys involved. But perhaps as Dan Kavazin at decodingtv.com points out in his recap, this is further proof that there is no such thing as paper in the Star Wars universe, which is a much debated topic.
Yes.
But anyway, they have their own variant of rock, paper, scissors. But okay, that's that subplot with Cassian Andor. Let's move on to the second plot line. Cassian's friends from season 1 are posing as farmers and have established a temporary home on Minoro. We see Bix is there, Brasso, the droid B2EMO is there. The young Wilmon is there. When an Imperial starship appears overhead, they learn that the planet will be subjected to an audit, threatening their anonymity. It isn't long before a squad of Imperial officers and stormtroopers appear at their farm, rifling through their shops and homes. One officer, Zala, uses his position to belittle Bix's life as a lowly farmer, while also propositioning her to join him for dinner in the capital city of Rao. Eventually, he threatens to imprison her and her family if she doesn't comply with his sexual advances. They fight, and Bix eventually gains the upper hand and bashes Zala's head in. Brasso uses the confusion to save his friend and escape from the stormtroopers on a speeder. As he races across the wheat fields, Cassian Andor shows up in his TIE fighter and swiftly dispatches the remaining Imperials and their fleeing transport ship. However, it's too late, and Brasso is killed in the action. As Cassian, Bix, and Wilmon flee in the TIE fighter, he is tearfully forced to leave Brasso's body behind. Pretty devastating. Pretty
David,
sad.
I'm so sad.
Yeah.
I look, we loved Brasso in season 1.
Yeah.
Obviously in the final episode of that season, he is such a hero, bashing the guy's let the guy's head in with the funeral brick. He's like the best friend. I was so happy to see him back, and I'm so sad to lose it. I mean, he was the best, but obviously, like I said earlier, I think so much of this is about the sacrifices that everyone has to live with, fighting in this war, and especially like if this is bridging the gap to Rogue One, and you get to Rogue One where Cassian is a guy who just like kind of like cold-bloodedly like kills an informant like in the first scene where we meet him, and it's like, how do we get this guy to that point? And it's like, oh right, if he basically is just dealing with like losing his best friends and stuff, like this guy's got a really rough, dark road. And yeah, I really found all this stuff really interesting, especially, this is the most I think explicit we get about just like the the glove of fascism, like, coming and like, crushing regular people.
There's an authoritarian government rounding up immigrants, and all the immigrants want to do is work in fields. They just want to be left alone. I cannot see any parallels to real life in this plot at all. But I will just say it's notable that Disney is putting this out. But
it is.
Yeah, I agree that this plotline is very engaging, and I also just think like the look of Minoro is really compelling. It's just like endless wheat fields. Zack Snyder would freaking lose his mind watching this, right? Like just endless wheat fields, like all these harvesting machines or silos, like periodically there. It looks great in my opnion, and so
it looks incredible. And then of course when you've got stuff like Brasso on a speeder, like flying through, these fields of it, are Willman like like running. I mean, people running through wheat fields always looks good, and it's just I love that this show keeps finding like new variations of planets to give us, and it's not just like, oh, another desert planet.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the great things about the show is like introducing you to new worlds. Here's the wheat planet, Patrick. There's just endless wheat.
And also, but we're going to get into like, we're going to show how like the silos work and the irrigation machines and stuff like that. There's just like, shout out to Luke Hull, the production designer, who again is just like going above and beyond, doing incredible work of like making like all of these worlds feel so real. And that like, you see just like when these characters are just like at work, doing their jobs, working with this machinery, I believe that all of this stuff works and that they know how to work it.
Yeah. A couple of other things to mention about this subplot. One is the situation between Bix and the Imperial officer. Pretty brutal. Like, just it's rare to see like a brutal hand-to-hand fight like that in Star Wars.
I mean, I don't think we've ever seen anything like this in Star Wars.
Yeah,
I know I have not read every Star Wars like novel, but I'm fairly certain that this is the first time the word rape has been said in a Star Wars thing.
Yeah. And I think it's just an illustration of when you live under an authoritarian regime, like there's always this kind of menacing threat lurking behind every suggestion or order. And in the case of Bix, sometimes the people who are subjected to it lash out in fatal fashion.
And I think it's worth pointing out
very
that,
justifiably so.
Yeah, but also Bix's introduction in this season is her having a nightmare.
Yeah.
Her clearly with like PTSD from the events of season 1. Really, Bix is kind of like, dealing with, like, she goes through more than almost anybody else in the show.
Yeah. So anyway, wanted to note that was kind of a dynamic that the show illustrated. The other thing that I thought was interesting was their confidant betrays them. And I thought that was a really interesting plot development where Brasso's like interacting with this guy who's like helping them, and he's like, hey, they're on the way, go to this sector, it's gonna be fine. And then I don't think it's ever like confirmed, but it's heavily implied that guy who is helping them like betrayed them.
Well, this is what I was actually wondering.
Yeah.
At that part, because and it's never made explicit, but when Brasso was like being held down and shouting at the guy, I was wondering there, did the guy not betray them, but were they just coming around anyway? And Brasso was shouting at him to basically like protect him,
right? Yeah,
to make it to basically like let all the Imperial officers know like, oh no, that guy is on their side and not part of what they're doing.
I thought about I literally had that exact same reaction. I was like, oh, maybe because the guy seems so nice, right? Like,
yes,
he was
and
such
really
a nice,
like going to efforts to like to help them out.
Right. I was like, oh, that guy couldn't have betrayed them because he's such a nice guy. But then Brasso starts screaming at him, and I was like, oh, maybe Brasso's doing this so like the Imperial soldiers think he's on the side. But like, I'm not sure that makes sense. Like, if anyway, I don't know. And I thought that like I feel like I remember that old gentleman giving him a look that indicated like he was responsible for this, but like it's open to interpretation, I think.
Yeah. And it's funny, like, I kind of read that look as him being at first kind of surprised and confused why Brasso was shouting at him, and then kind of like realizing like what he's, and like, maybe I won't say anything. And look, people, listeners and viewers in the comments,
let us know what you thought of.
How do you interpret that?
But assuming my interpretation is correct, I do think it's kind of like the people who are gonna hurt you are the ones who seem like they might help you. You know, like and they can be indistinguishable at first. So
exactly, anyway. These characters are going to become increasingly paranoid as this goes on. Also, I liked because when this season begins, it does say 1 year later. So we've jumped ahead a year from the end of last season, and now both Brasso and Willman have little like romantic subplots. They've like, found people on this planet. And granted, Willman has to, neither of those relationships really end well. But they've got, but like,
you don't know. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen with Woman. Okay, so to be clear,
he could go back.
It's true. He could go back once he's been driven out by the Imperial soldiers. He could go back, maybe, probably, hopefully.
But I like the sense that like when this season begins and you see everyone here, it's like, oh, they've like built a life here. They've been doing. They really like, they know how to do this work. They have this like community there. It's again like we might not see any of these characters on this planet again, but it feels like so cohesive and so like fully realized.
Yeah, agreed. Any other thoughts on this plotline, Patrick Willems?
That is I mean, even though Brasso's death is heartbreaking, Cassian finally arriving is like so exciting.
Very satisfying. Very satisfying.
It is. And also just then seeing like, he's getting better at operating the TIE fighter, and just seeing it's like, its targeting system, and just seeing him like blasting stormtroopers. I'm just like, because also like, again, when seeing like the the officer who like assaults Bix and all of that, it's just like the interesting thing with this show in terms of like, reframing how we look at the Empire, stormtroopers, all of that is like, in like the original trilogy, stormtroopers, right? It's like, they have terrible aim. They're just cannon fodder, whatever. And they're not, other than like Darth Vader and stuff like that, they're rarely very like threatening or like, but here, like, they spend so much time in Andor really delivering these like loathsome characters who are not like cartoonishly evil, who are just bad people, like abusing their power. And so it's extra satisfying to watch them get blasted, to watch him like just like fire off that that proton torpedo and blow up that one transport. It's good.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that's the red meat for the Star Wars crowd is killing stormtroopers. So
that's it. The show has everything.
All right, let's move on to the third plotline. In the third plotline, we pick up with Dedra Meero as she participates in a secret Imperial meeting alongside Major Partagaz. She is now assigned to work under Director Orson Krennic. Holy shit, Ben Mendelsohn coming back. Krennic has gathered them to oversee the Galactic Energy Initiative to provide the Emperor with stable, unlimited energy for his empire. Although I wonder if it's a front for something else. As it turns out, the Empire is highly interested in the underground mineral calcite, which they will need to coat the lenses of their various reactors. However, the project that Dedra and the fellow officers will be embarking on involves not mineral extraction, but preemptive forcible control over the Gorman people, all 800,000 of whom would face eradication with the removal of the planet's calcite core. So, Dedra recovered from the catastrophic events at Ferrix from last season. She's now been given a new assignment. And I guess we have to talk about it, Patrick Willems.
It's that time?
Dedra Meero and Cyril Karn are in a relationship.
David.
Yes. I literally screamed, and I thought of you. When I saw, because the thing is, there's no exposition that explains any of this. Like, you just put together what's going. Like, he shows up at home, and you put together what's going on, and yeah. What did you think?
Well, what did I think? Oh boy. Okay. So, it's time to get into the content corner.
Yes.
So, okay. There's so much to talk about, and I do want to talk about just, Dedra and Krennic and Gorman and all of that, but let's jump into just Mr. Cyril Karn first.
Yes.
So he's not in episode 1 at all.
Yes.
In episode 2, we first see him back at his job at the. Remind me what the
I
place.
believe it's the Bureau of Standards. Where he's working.
Yes, and so, but now he's been promoted, and he is giving someone like a new employee the same tour that he was given on his first day back in season 1, and he clearly is like, once again, he just loves having any authority, and he's like giving he's got delivering a speech that you can tell he is, if not delivered before, he has practiced. Even like his well-timed like finger snap.
I was given a position in fuel purity, just over there.
And explaining how how there's room to really grow here because he put in extra work, and he found like errors or like abuses in the system, and he got promoted, and so he is really feeling himself here. And then and I'm loving this. I want to be
already just if that was it, if that was the whole Cyril subplot, we'd be like, oh, that was wonderful, great,
exactly,
great check-in.
Fantastic.
But the bountiful feast is about to continue.
Oh my God. I want to be clear here for all listeners, in that when I talk about Cyril Karn and Dedra Meero, these are bad people. They are, Dedra is like a full-on fascist. Karn is like, he's like a wannabe fascist, basically. And like me enjoying their relationship and their dynamic is I don't want to be friends with these people. They're bad, but I think it is really, really compelling to watch, because then in episode 2 we have this scene where we see Dedra doing what it seems like all Imperial officers love doing, just standing by a window, like looking out and just, I guess, thinking about, how they're going to like crush insurgents. And then the front door to the apartment opens, and Cyril Karn returns home. And David, I basically spent every scene with Karn for this and the 3rd episode just clutching my head, like vibrating with excitement, because very important thing. So it's established they are in a relationship. They live together. They never kiss. The only physical contact they make is when Dedra kind of grabs his face with her hand, which is so funny. And there's like, I think he wasn't expecting her home like that day. And he has this line about like, maybe we could pretend that you weren't home yet. Basically, it being like, hey, maybe, I took this to be like, indicating they could have sex. Mm-hmm. And she's like, no. Like we're not, that's not going to happen. And just the dynamic between the two, clearly her feelings toward him changed to some extent after he saved her life at the end of season 1. But still,
he also gives one of the greatest monologues in Star Wars history when he says, quote, "I've realized that life is worth living. I've realized that, if nothing else, there was justice and beauty in the galaxy." Well, you've memorized it. You have it memorized, Patrick Willems.
Oh, I do. Well, I did famously edit a fan cam about these two in season 1. But so everything there is incredible, and I'm like, this can't possibly get better. And then in episode 3, Edie Karn comes over for dinner to meet Dedra for the first time. And I mean, look, not to get too hyperbolic here, but this is like as good as television gets.
Literally, this is the best TV you will watch all year.
I mean, the point when Cyril has to, he's so stressed out and he has to remove himself from the room. And he's like, "I'll be right back." And then we cut to him just laying face down on their bed.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I thought this man couldn't get more pathetic than everything he went through in season 1. And there he is hiding from his mother in his bedroom. While then, Dedra basically like lays down like she's the only person to ever like talk back to Edie Karn and is basically like, "Look, here's what's going to happen. Cyril will visit you twice a month. She's basically just like, I don't like you. Stop throwing the name Uncle Harlow around because I've looked up his ISB record and he does have criminal ties and this is not very impressive and like you will see your son periodically, but like, I don't want to really deal with you."
When I say the word plan, that makes it sound optional, which is not the impression you should be taking away.
It's delightful.
Yes.
Also,
and
they're eating this weird, gross food that looks kind of like some sort of like alien stew fondue thing.
Right. Yeah, and you really get a sense of like what their dynamic is. You know, Karn needs a domineering woman. Because you sense that like they both get something out of this relationship, and there's something very sweet about that, even though they're both helping to reinforce this extremely repressive government. You know,
exactly. Also, I just like huge shout out to Catherine Hunter as Edie Karn.
Yes.
is
one
just
of the great actors of all time, Catherine Hunter. Right,
she's incredible, and just in this whole dinner sequence. Just watching her, like, we've seen her play off of Cyril before and, like, kind of, like, put him down, like, boss him around. But then just having Dedra there as well, and just the dynamic with the three of them is just... I mean, it sounds crazy to be like, "Oh, there's a new Star Wars show. Yeah, it's so cool. What's the best part?" I like the part when the two people have dinner with one of their, like, domineering mothers, and they're just like rude to each other. But also, we find out about Dedra's childhood, that her parents died because they were criminals, and she was raised in basically like a state-funded like foster home type thing.
The Kinderblock.
The Kinderblock. And she's so just like, "Oh, that it was fine. Why? Yes. Why would I need anything else?" And Edie's like, "Oh, but you didn't have a mother's love." Her classic line that she loves throwing around. It's this is just such good stuff.
We had everything we needed.
Except a mother's love.
We didn't know what we were missing.
The content just like off the charts.
The
in these first 3 episodes
overfloweth. The content overfloweth.
All right. Oh my god.
So, any thoughts about the Star Wars part of this subplot where they're mining calcite from the Gormans? I thought that the way in which this is set up is really interesting. The Empire actually cares about things like public sentiment, I think, at this stage. And so like there's a lot of real world parallels that I think the show is trying to draw.
Yes.
And I think that it's fascinating to watch them try to navigate like, hey, we need these minerals. By the way, if these people won't go peaceably, we'll need to use force, and like we need to prepare for that now. And you kind of see how that starts to happen. Pretty fascinating stuff, I think. So anyway,
this that whole scene, scene, like they cut back to it.
Yeah, it's a series of scenes. Yeah,
but it's all in one room, in this like secret meeting where it's like they've assembled like the best of the best from various like Imperial agencies. I love when they have the two guys from the Ministry of Enlightenment, who are basically just like the propaganda wing of everything, who are just kind of like sowing just like ideas of like just trying to like introduce ideas or sentiments into the public. Just like they're taking care of just like the imaging, and they've been working on just giving the Gorman people, or the Gore as they're called, just this kind of like reputation image as like a little like snooty and like better than everyone else, and just like trying to make people in the rest of the galaxy not like them very much. so that should they be wiped out, like public sentiment will not, will not be on their side. But like the way this begins, where Krennic comes in and like the shades come down over the windows and they just watch like an informational, basically like just like, yeah, this like informational video like produced by like the Gorman Board of Tourism about this world, explaining how they, they're known for like making fabrics that are like kind of like woven from like the silk of these spiders. And they talk about like this, this Gorman instrument, this horn that they play. And it's just like, it looks like so many like tourism videos produced like in the real world for like any country, and it's so funny seeing one of these in Star Wars. It's just the kind of thing that you would never expect from a show like this.
Yeah, I mean, I feel a couple of different ways about it, to be honest, Patrick Willems, because I think that what is clear is that they're really trying to draw real world parallels. Like I don't recall Star Wars ever talking about PR before.
No.
Right? Like the characters in Star Wars talking PR. So like that's a new thing. The idea that there's like basically the equivalent of television in Star Wars. I think there might have been stuff like that in Skeleton Crew, but like,
well, that's always been a thing in Star Wars. It's called the HoloNet.
But is it on like TV screens and stuff? Has it been in the past?
Or it's a thing that I first encountered it in a book from like in the Revenge of the Sith novelization, but it is a thing where they have like news broadcasts and stuff like that. There is like, well,
I see.
Yeah, it's just that Star Wars stuff, movies and shows tend to be about people who are like, running around doing action stuff, not sitting around
at the
watching
edges
TV.
of the galaxy or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I guess when I see a show like Skeleton, do you watch Skeleton Crew?
I still haven't caught up on it. I've watched the first 2 episodes.
It's like, what if there was a world in the Star Wars universe that was exactly like an 80s suburb in America,
yes.
right?
That's in the ones the 2 episodes I've seen.
Right. And so it's like, but I think that and now with this, like we're gonna see, I think like a lot of parallels between us, like in the real world, in this Star Wars, and I feel like to some degree it's taking away from what makes Star Wars special, which is that it didn't have a lot. It didn't have things like PR because there was no such thing as like the media as we conceive of it.
Right.
But anyway, that's a very minor issue. I'm not saying like it's kills the whole story for me or anything, but it's just like I realize like it's very rare to watch like, oh, here's the kind of 60s era style videotape that we would, and it's like, well, it didn't exist. We haven't seen stuff like that really because it's impossible in that universe. And I kind of liked that it was different and special, but
right.
Yeah,
I understand what you mean, where there is kind of like, we each have our own like line for this kind of thing, but it's like, okay, if the original hook for Star Wars was like, it's a space opera, there's like laser swords and spaceships and stuff like that, and it's like, but also you want the world to feel, especially like, when it's going to, this world, it's going to support like infinite, like movies and shows and books and comics about like every facet of it. It's like, you need the world to feel cohesive and plausible, but what is the point where it like, you make it so believable that it takes away from like the fun, like romance of it.
Right.
And,
or whatever story you're trying to tell, like,
right.
which is I think what's going on here. But everyone, you're right, everyone has their own line. Like some people are like, why do the guns look like guns in Andor? Like, which is true, right? So,
but it's also those things where it's I've seen people complain that like, oh, why do they still have the same units of measurement and time in Star Wars?
Yeah.
But then other things have different words. But this is also like, because so much of the show is just about like Imperial bureaucracy and like the minutia of like a fascist regime and how it works. I'm like, if they're gonna do that, it absolutely to me makes sense to then bring in like like basically PR like workers and stuff like that, and like, because it all plays a role in this. And so of course if they are planning an operation like this, it totally makes sense to be like, well, if the way this would work would be they would have people who are working on just like, what's the public relations of all of this? How do we like how do we use like propaganda or and just news and imagery in order to like turn public sentiment and like so that we can get away with this stuff.
Right.
Because then you've got Dedra talking to Krennic, and Dedra does not really want this assignment, but she's like, look, if you want to do this, like the way to do it is to like, pretty much like manipulate some sort of like, Gorman like insurgent group.
Right.
Like,
right.
You need
like
to
make them do things that people will find unsympathetic.
Exactly.
So that when the Imperial regime counteracts that, people will be more understanding.
You need Gorman rebels you can depend on to do the wrong thing. Director.
I think it's worth mentioning that Gorman is a name that has a word that has come up in discussions of Star Wars lore before. Patrick and I know what Gorman is in reference to, and there is some potentially big events coming up relating to the Gormans that are part of Star Wars lore and that have been discussed specifically by Tony Gilroy in the press. We are not going to discuss what these events are because even referring to them might be considered a spoiler. But suffice to say, there is something relating to the Gormans that is going to happen this season. Patrick and I know about it. We'll talk about it if and when it happens. But just wanted people to know we're aware of it. We're not going to talk about it just to preserve the surprise for people who are not as steeped in Star Wars lore as Patrick and I. So.
Gorman is not a new planet created
Yes.
for the show Andor.
Yes. It is already part of the existing lore. All right. So, should be interesting to see how the show handles whatever it's going to handle in relation to the Gormans.
Yes, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff here, and I'm wondering how much more we'll see Ben Mendelsohn, and like I don't know how many episodes he's contracted for, but yeah, it's just like we in when we on our coverage of the first season, we began that by revisiting Rogue One. Which is a movie that I remain somewhat mixed on, despite loving a lot of elements of it. And Krennic is one of the things that I really loved in that. And so, I'm thrilled to see him back. And also just, I find all of the Imperial bureaucracy stuff so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And just seeing like how all of this works. Like I love the part in, I think it's episode 2 or actually it might be episode 1, where after Krennic's like presentation and talk has finished, you see these officers just at a little like table with a bunch of appetizers. Like it's been catered.
Yeah.
Just that kind of thing. It's like we've never, at no point in the original trilogy was General Tarkin going over and just having like a salmon puff.
Yeah, he's like, nobody asked, hey, where are the snacks? Who didn't bring in the donuts today that they're supposed to? We never saw that. So
yeah.
Anyway, interesting stuff in that third plotline. Let's talk about what is in the fourth plotline. And that is, in the final plotline, we join the rebellion leaders. Mon Mothma, Luthen, Vel, Tay Kolma, Clea, at the Mothma estate on Chandrilla for the wedding of Mon's daughter Lita to banker Davos Skulden and his son Stekken. Mon Mothma learns that her daughter is having cold feet about the wedding, and Tay, whose money is helping to fuel the rebellion, is having similar doubts about his future involvement. Mon learns that he has just gone through a rough divorce, is growing impatient about the return on his investment, and has been seen publicly intoxicated around members of the Galactic Senate, who could end the rebellion overnight if they discovered her involvement. Concurrently, Vel has been increasingly frustrated by her inability to communicate with her partner Cinta, who has been sent on a secret mission by Luthen at the end of the previous season. Eventually, all these plots come together in a brilliant final episode where Mon's hesitation about how to handle Tay leads her to confront her daughter regarding her own arranged marriage, imploring her, you do not have to go through with this. It is Lita who she is in a way searching for any reason to back out of the path she has laid before herself, but it is Lita who first resists her mother's pleas, and Luthen who pushes back the strongest against Mon's resistance to getting her hands dirty, as he decides that Tay must be killed. So in a bravura sequences that closes out the episode, Lita is wed to Stekken. Tay boards his ship back to Coruscant as Vel watches. It is then that she notices it's Cinta who's piloting the craft, no doubt ordered by Luthen to assassinate Tay before he can do further damage to the rebellion. In the final scenes, Mon Mothma dances and loses herself in the rhythm, keenly aware that she has sacrificed her moral high ground and been a party to murder to further her pursuits. This plotline was awesome, I think. Really
so
well
good.
done. And one of my favorite lines in there's so many amazing lines in Andor season 1. And I think one of the you sometimes feel like when you watch Stellan Skarsgård's speech on the balcony, like, oh, that's going to be a line that or a speech that people talk about for a long time.
Yeah.
I think one of the lines that's going to be like legendary status is when Mon Mothma says something along the lines of, I don't understand what you're saying.
I'm not sure what you're saying.
And then Luthen says,
How nice for you.
you know, like, I thought that was just like such a good, like, oh, that's so nice that you don't understand that I'm implying we should assassinate your friend.
Yep.
Incredible. And then just the intercutting with her dancing and like, you know, losing herself, even though she's just like not ordered, but like kind of been party to this assassination. It's incredible. It's an incredible sequence. What do you think, Patrick Willems?
I mean, I loved this storyline so much. It's like right from the very beginning. I mean, once again, we must say that this is the first we've actually seen of Chandrilla, at least in this show. I have not seen every episode of every animated show, so I don't know. But like once again, it has its own unique aesthetic. It's like all in the mountains. And of course, the costumes here, Michael Wilkinson doing spectacular work. But I want to talk about the filmmaking a little bit because it's the kind of thing that it's not like flashy, but like when we first meet Mon in episode 1, and she's like outside as everyone is kind of arriving, she's meeting everyone. There's a oneer that lasts for over 2 minutes, just following her around, talking to various people, and it is like it's so elegantly executed. It's and it's also like the set that it's on is it really shows off all of that. And there are other. Do you have the director of the first 3 episodes right there? Although wait,
I don't.
I've got it.
Okay.
Ariel Kleinman directed the first 3, but there are multiple kind of like very subtle, like well executed long takes. Like at the end of episode 1, when the final shot of that episode, it's when the kind of like battle breaks out on Yavin. Where like the first like shot is fired, and then in that shot the camera turns and follows Cassian as he's running away, and then he's tackled, and then it moves around him as he's picked up and like dragged away as like blaster fire is like raining down on them, and that's all done in one shot. And then there's this one introducing Mon Mothma and that whole cast of characters, and I'm just like, look, not only is the show really well written, really well acted, has like really good action and everything, it's just like it's really terrific filmmaking.
Yeah, and they really made this seem like a cohesive place. They built this elaborate set, what looks like, but also they like, go hiking in the mountains, which looks spectacular.
Yeah.
I'm like, it looks like they actually went there. It doesn't look like it was on the volume or anything. So I'm just like, holy crap! Like, again, I see where the $290 million went to. So
exactly. I also one of those things where I'm curious, like where they shot this stuff. A lot of it they shoot, in like in England, Scotland, stuff like that. This looks more like, okay, I'm like, which like is this like in like the Balkans or something? Like what what mountain range is this in? But yeah, but this stuff, it's a lot of it's the kind of thing that might seem boring on paper, like for a Star Wars show. It's like, oh, everyone's preparing for a wedding, and Mon Mothma's daughter is getting cold feet because her, her future husband in this arranged marriage is like, as she calls him, a child and won't hold her hand. And a lot of people dressed fancy, like walking around giving speeches and making toasts and stuff like that. But just like we got into it in season 1, but like the dynamic like that Mon has with all her family members, with Tay and everyone, I think it's great to see Vel there. All of that is really good. But like I love when Luthen and Clea are there, and like Mon's like, what why are you guys here?
I'm afraid that's a secret.
And of course, because Davos Skelton has, got a very expensive wedding gift from them. But also I like having like, Cleo there for her day job, but also like working on her other job and like trying to, and Clea's dynamic with everybody I find really fun. Like her with Vel, where there's the part where she's talking to Vel. They're at a party and they're kind of like having to, work out their their cover story about, do they know each other? Did they meet for the first time?
Right.
And she's like, oh no, we've met before because you visited the shop. And then she has this line. She's like, we're just two single women, like looking at like the prospects or whatever.
Just two single women surveying the prospects.
Did they make it explicit that Vel and Cinta broke up?
No, but I think that probably my interpretation was like the time and the distance has been costly on the relationship. That was my interpretation.
Because I was wondering, was that line when Clea says two single women, was that like a reference to like, oh, Vel is newly single? Because then Vel looks her up and down and walks away.
I think Vel is not officially dating Cinta, FYI. Like, okay. That's not a relationship you want on the books. Because she's a rebel spy. Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, some great stuff here. I do think the relationship between Mon and Lita is a little bit underdeveloped. Like, there's supposed to be this big moment when Lita kind of chastises her mom for, how dare you even consider this, basically. And I don't think there was enough. I appreciated the concept of the scene, which is Mon is having second thoughts about burning the ships and leaving her whole life behind. I like that. I like that it's like a catharsis for that. But I think the Lita moment, I just felt like I never really got their relationship very well from season 1, and I think that I don't have enough of it to really have that beat land for me in season 2. But everything else about the Mon stuff was excellent, and she's clearly like at a stage where she's like out of her depth and doesn't really know what she's doing right now. Right? Yeah. She's kind of like, she's supportive of the cause, but like she's still very much in her old ways. And it's challenging for her to move into whatever. I mean, we know she's going to become a rebel leader eventually. But this is a very, very, very early on in that, right? So
it is. Yeah. I mean, I'm excited to see, where she goes, like after the 1 year jump into the next storyline. But I know what you mean about the relationship with Lita, because in like season 1, Lita's whole thing has basically been like, oh, she is a teenager who's like, oh, mom, you're annoying. I like you're, I just like, it's just like the natural teenage, like I'm always mad at my mom for like no real reason. I find everything she does annoying or like frustrating or to be a drag. And so, and there isn't much more to it than that. But on Mon's side, she's dealing with a lot, and I do like, I just like that idea where she is just, telling Lita that, you can back out, you can change your mind. And but there's so many good things here. Like I like when Perrin is referring to Tay as her boyfriend and just basically just assuming that she's having an affair. and because she talks to Tay so much, and this is just another thing where that's like the least of Mon's problems, but just another annoying thing where she's like, oh god, like I'm like, I am doing something behind your back, but it's like it's not that. But just where
don't you hate it when your significant other assumes that you're having an affair instead of laundering money? You know,
exactly. But the thing that that just like I cannot stop thinking about is just that sequence at the wedding reception where, first of all, they bring back the song Neamos, with the Morlana club mix. Also worth pointing out, Nicholas Britell was not able to return as composer this season. But so far, do you have the new composer? I've almost got it. The new composer is Brandon
Roberts.
Yeah. But I think, the music not missing a beat, obviously using themes introduced by Britell, but the way it has a new remix of Neamos that is like that. Did you catch that the crowd shouts Neamos?
No, I didn't.
Basically,
but they all know the Neamos dance.
Yes,
everyone knows how to do the dance.
But it's the kind of thing, because as we saw in season 1, Neamos is like Space Miami, so it's basically like an EDM song like called Miami.
Yes,
this
is their version of the Macarena, basically.
Yes, and just like again things that we do, like I remember like talking in our season 1 podcast how. There's that part in the first couple episodes where Tim, Bix's late boyfriend, goes to a bar and like has a bunch to drink, and then and is like like drinks, and he gets jealous about like her talking to Cassian, and we were like, wow, we've never seen this kind of thing in Star Wars. And now here, Mon downing shots at the wedding reception and then just going a ham on the dance floor. I'm like, this rocks. It's so cathartic because it's like, look, her life is a mess. One of her oldest friends is going to die because of like what she got him into, and there's nothing she can do but like kind of like drink her feelings away. And just dance to to like a Space Miami banger. And I'm just like, this is such a cool sequence. Like no show is doing anything like this.
I agree. One of my other favorite touches from this episode, Patrick, is the auto paparazzi machine. Like there's like a floating camera that has like 8 cameras on it with flashes and everything. I just thought that was cool. Like, I don't know why you'd have like, that you don't need that many angles. Anyway, it was just a weird thing, but I was like, that's so cool. Why don't actual weddings have that?
I know.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Also, just like and the way it's shot, with like the sunlight kind of like pouring in through these doorways, and so like the dancing is just like it's so much of it is like backlit as everyone is kind of like spinning around. It's just it looks spectacular, and just kind of like a trope or technique I've always enjoyed is like when cross-cutting between multiple things, like kind of like reaching their climax, having one of them just basically be a dance scene where it's just kind of like this like visual and musical energy, while like over in the other storyline, Cassian is like mowing down stormtroopers in the TIE fighter. I'm like, this is great. This is worth the 2.5-year wait.
Yeah, absolutely. Also cool that they don't show Tay getting assassinated. Like it was just you kind of just gotta you just need to understand what's going on there. They don't really say it, right?
Yeah,
you just have to understand. Yeah,
yeah. Back in season 1, when Cassian was on Aldhani and Nemec, R.I.P., was explaining who all the different people in their little group were. Didn't he say that Cinta is a true believer?
I think that's right. Yeah,
and she is the one who has the least amount of doubt or moral reservations about doing what needs to be done for the cause.
Indeed. All right. Any closing thoughts, Patrick Willems?
Other than to restate what I already said, just maybe the best content we have ever had, and I am really over the moon with what we've got. But also, and beyond Karn, just what a great start.
I said I think I screamed when I saw it because I think there's so much. Here we see kind of the flaws in this release schedule, which is like, I would have loved to understand how that relationship came together, but it's like, no, we just cut to it and it's already basically fully developed.
Yes.
And that is a little bit of a bummer, but hopefully not the last we see of that relationship this season. So,
yeah. I mean, yes, in a perfect world, would I have had 12 hours mostly dedicated to just Karn and Miro's bizarre toxic courtship? Yes. But also I recognize I don't think there's any reality in which that gets made.
Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.